Watch Full Disclosure on YouTube and listen to us on NPR, Spotify, Apple, and all of the podcatchers. We put them all at one link, fulldradio.com. Again, fulldradio.com. Please subscribe, rate us, tell your girlfriend, mother-in-law, friends, everybody, and catch me on CNN and NPR's Here and Now. Joining me from New York, a person in serious demand. Deepali Vyas is known as the elite recruiter all across social media, where her reach is upward of 1 million. You see her on Instagram, on TikTok. She's actually maxed out her stay on LinkedIn, which is an incredible humble brag. You cannot connect with her on LinkedIn because she has too many first connections. Everybody's kind of pounding on her door. What else? Do you tap dance? Have you won a Nobel Prize? Have you played at Carnegie Hall?
I wish, all of the above.
Thank you for actually debasing yourself enough to come on Full Disclosure. I mean,
I'm honored.
This is
Roben.
dilutive, as they would say, kind of in VC fundraising rounds. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on, Roben.
Let's start with a cosmic question. With Passover ending and everything, what makes this job market so different from all other job markets? It seems like it's the no fire, no hire, whatever you want to call it. Feels like just 3-4 years ago, we were in an arms race for talent. You remember all the Wall Street firms rolling up SPACs. They couldn't hire people quickly enough. And then suddenly this asteroid of AI and Chat GPT and Claude comes out of nowhere. And now we're told that if you're 20 something, if you're a fresh hire, if you're somebody looking for a professional services job in those elite circles, forget it.
Yeah. So I think that let me just say this. It's a tough job market, and these job markets run in cycles. So a few years ago, it was frenetic, right? We were, as executive search people, extremely busy. We're over capacity. Too many things were going on. People were, hiring in droves. And now you're seeing it on the other side, right? And I've lived through a lot of these market cycles, whether it was 2001, whether it was 2007. There's always cycles that happen. This one seems a little different, but I will say, Roben, that there's a bit of mixed messaging out there as well. And I'll explain. One, you're right. It's a low fire, low hire market, which makes it even tougher for people to, get unstuck, right? People that want to make the move or pivot or whatever. There's not a lot of hiring going on. And this whole doom and gloom around AI, bit of a misnomer, right? Because I think that when I'm in the boardrooms with these CEOs and hiring managers, they are all saying, we want AI fluency. We want to lean into AI. We want all of this stuff. And it doesn't mean that they're trying to say we want to replace our workforce, but it's also making it harder for the job market to stand out and say, hey, we are AI fluent. Here are the tools that we're using. This is what we can do for you. And so that's where the rub is, right? There's a lot of things that are going on, but I'll kind of take it back to sort of grads, right? Because you said you had kind of alluded to this.
It is the norm right now for 20-somethings, even out of elite schools. There's
Absolutely.
no shame.
Look,
there's much consternation. You can't get work.
Yeah. So here's my answer to that, right? Like, signals matter beyond just GPA. So GPA and school prestige used to be proxies for intelligence and discipline, right? And today we're kind of seeing them as weak signals, because what employers are really looking for is evidence. If you can operate in ambiguity, if you can create value quickly. So what I would advise these grads are like, where's the proof of execution? Have you tinkered and built something? Have you solved something? Have you contributed to something real? Second is, I would say, and I wish I knew this when I was younger, which is the whole reason why I'm doing all of this stuff on my socials on career literacy, commercial awareness, right? A lot of these new grads, do they understand how business makes money, where value is created, where it's lost? And the third is, a lot of people are kind of waiting around for permission. And I think, they want to be told what to do or how to do it versus just going out and creating opportunities for themselves. I was actually telling your producer right before you jumped on was, a lot of people think about big logos when they come into the market. I need to work for these big firms. There's so much opportunity in these AI startups, mid-sized businesses, small mom and pop shops. Think about that, where you can really create your career or even do skills-based sort of hiring in those formats. And so I think going beyond that big logo.
So I imagine, let's say you had your sights on a big logo, but you know that small and medium-sized businesses are immediately being disrupted by AI. I'm thinking about real estate agencies and copywriters, people who write blurbs for things. I'm thinking about magazine photo editors. It used to be, I just know this very pungently. We had a huge art staff at Business Week back in the day, design staff to go and commission hand-drawn illustrations. And you and I know that Midjourney and ChatGPT and the others can really narrow that down, it's unbelievable, the quantum leap that we've taken there, to say nothing of presentations and pitch books, things that the managing director, at Goldman used to call me and is like, no, this doesn't work. Tweak this, tweak this. It's now a prompt. And so what we kind of knew as Excel jockeys and the like has rapidly been shown anachronistic, or has rapidly been automated. Okay. Yeah. So what if I'm that person right now? What if I'm trapped and you see JP Morgan, you see the headline bulge bracket banks and consulting firms that you deal with say that we're going to lean in to AI automation so much. Can you theoretically pivot to, say, a mom and pop or something that, like I said, a real estate agency or something that is being disrupted kind of at the Main Street ground level, to show your chops as you illustrated, right? To say that you were execution minded and you came in and you actually solved something.
Exactly. Well, I think, going into companies that are being disrupted or being disrupted by other startups. So you gave the example of real estate. If I was a grad right now, I would look at real estate tech firms. If I want to be in that industry, let me look at what's adjacent. What are they solving for? Let me get into those smaller startups and figure out what that universe is and start networking into some of those larger firms. You are selling to those real estate companies that might be getting disrupted, right? And so I would think about it in that way, right? Because now I'm solving something for that industry. And now you're making all the connections, all the while being really hands-on with those cutting edge tools.
But aren't they, I said, a chicken or egg problem that you get experience versus that foot in the door? If you go into a big place, I'm thinking of CoStar, which has a big presence in DC and in Central Virginia here. You come in and you have to almost pitch yourself as being super fluent in AI and Claude and these various other things, because you're not there. It's not a teaching hospital. Whereas a small, medium-sized, a small firm, maybe it's just in my mind's eye, but I'm trying to kind of get it at the actionability that's been so elusive here. I know you get bombarded with people who said, I'm getting no traction on LinkedIn. I'm getting no traction with the informational interviews. It just feels like quicksand and everything is slow-mo.
Yeah. But I also think that you would be surprised in these organizations how much AI fluency is there. And so if I had to advise on, again, where you are in your specific career, think about your job in sort of skills and tasks, and think about what AI can automate. When you start speaking in that sort of workflow of, here are the things that I can do and automate from a routine or mundane perspective, and here's where I can contribute in terms of solving problems, that's where people are winning. And the problem is, Roben, they're not able to articulate that part. They think that they're going to be replaced, or they're replacing themselves through this technology.
So time out. I imagine a scene like, the mathematician Good Will Hunting thing. I mean, in my mind's eye, you walk into that boardroom, you have some older boomers and Gen X people. And it's like, if you imagine yourself as a prompt jockey, as a prompt magician, like, watch what I can do. For example, it's almost like a software company coming in and selling them on a service. And by intimation, I'm so fluent with this, I'm so facile with this, that if you bring me in, you bring in that alpha. Is that what you kind of have to do? Is that what you have to, it's not theoretical. It's not on a piece of paper. It's like, let me show you what your workflows are, what the process is, and what I can expedite, therefore making me an immediately kind of ROI positive prospect.
Yeah. And I'll just reframe that just a bit, right? What you're describing is performance, and what's actually getting hired at the senior levels is judgment and translation, right? So I would say that, instead of saying, watch what I can do with prompts, that's sort of like operator energy. Here's how I would change how this business runs. That's executive energy. Right. And that's what those executives are looking for. They want someone to walk into the boardroom and be able to talk to the older generation, the Gen X operators, the skeptical leadership. And those guys are not asking, is this person good at AI? What they're asking is, can this person help me run my business better without blowing it up?
Now, question, I see this as a through line on your social media presences, on Instagram, all over, on LinkedIn. You're straddling a line between kind of confidence and cockiness. And maybe it's the Iranian me talking. You could look up Taruf in Iranian culture as kind of preemptive self-effacement. And then a lot of, as a lot of grads get looked at as cocky. They come in at interviews like, oh, you got an elite education. at a public Ivy or an Ivy, and how dare you come in and tell me what you think I need or how I'm going to do it. But there's a big part of you that says you need to be that person. You need to take that leap of faith, make that leap of faith, and almost tell them what they need in terms of you, not as an operator, but as a executive fixer.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I wish someone, again, had told me to be more confident and stand 10 toes down. I guess earlier in my career, I did have conviction in certain parts, and other parts I was sort of second guessing myself. But there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance, right? But confidence that signals leadership is what they're looking for. And I really like that you brought up Tarov, right? Because I totally believe in self-advocacy. You've done all the schooling. You've been tinkering. You know what you're doing. The articulation of how you come across and what you can solve for them is gold. And I think what I tell people to do is understand the other person's agenda. When you're in front of them, this is not about you just doing self-advocacy like I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's not what I'm telling you to do. But what I am telling you to do is, one, know your audience, understand their agenda, and speak to their agenda on how you can solve their problems. Because if you can't do that, that's where it kind of falls apart. And they're going to say, this person is some arrogant kid that, just is going to tell me what to do. You need to bring people along for the ride. And I think that's where the unlock really is.
Full disclosure, I'm Roben Farzad. It's a joy to welcome Deepali Vyas. She is the elite recruiter all across social media dumb, executive coach, global head of data and AI executive search at ZRG. Very well traveled in corporate America, in the canyons, metaphorically and literally, of Wall Street and venture capital and VC. I got to ask you, you reflect back on your experience fresh out of college. I see that that's a through line as well. And I forever will be thinking, I asked my econ professor from high school, Mr. Lutness, we reunited again 7-8 years ago. I asked him the great cosmic question, what is the new normal? What is normal? And he told me, normal is what the world was like the week you graduated from college, the week you took your first job. If you were in an oil crisis, if there was a Wall Street meltdown, a credit crunch happening, clearly people who graduated into 2008 know that. Clearly the poor people who graduated into COVID in the spring of 2020 knew, to be in a lockdown or to graduate from high school and to go into that. Think about normalcy in that. I still can't get over what the world was like when I took that brokerage job at Goldman. And, in the interview process, I said this recently on other shows, like with Sam Rowe, they came in and took over the inn across from the front gates of our university. One night it would be Goldman Sachs and sushi night. The other night, Morgan Stanley or Lazard and fondue night. One would have like a cell night in New York. You're very familiar with this stuff. And they're talking about leadership and building dams in Kenya and all these highfalutin things and all the cabinet officers they had. And then the reality of it is, after you do training in Series 7, you're a spreadsheet jockey. And I would ask my dad, my late father, I miss him. I said, Dad, what's the point of all this? Why did they hire me? They could have just built a Kinko's in-house to slap pitch books together. And he goes, you're there to be productive and make them look good. They hired your pedigree. You're using them for something, and they're using you for something. And there was that kind of uneasy compact, as you know. So many of these bankers who complain about their 90, 100-hour work weeks, you're there, you're friends in need and friends with benefits. What do you make of that? And how would I... what is the new kind of approach to this, and that people are suddenly doubting the highfalutin 4-year liberal arts degree?
So first, I think your professor is absolutely right. Like, when whatever point in time you graduate is your normal, right? And all of those things that you stated they completely impact you in how you approach the workforce. And I would say that in today's era, right, you're walking into a lot of ambiguity and a lot of change very fast. And I think if you're not reading enough, if you're not networking enough, if you're not doing any of those things enough, you feel like you're falling behind. So that's one thing. And I think the second thing is, from a degree perspective, again, credentials and the degree are not the sense of credibility anymore, right? But where I think new grads can really kind of lean in on that experience gap is saying, here are the things that I've done that I am native at. This next generation is native at, tinkering around with these tools and doing all of this kind of cool, fun stuff. There's so many jobs. Roben, you said it before, copywriters that are, now doing different type of content and, AI enabled stuff. And there are whole industries or cottage industries sprouting around, media and content, right? So there's a lot of different opportunities, but I would say, leaning into not just saying that I have this degree, what do I do next? But you're right. They do need to enter into a market where there's some camaraderie. There's a social aspect to it. Just like you go to college and you have friends, and those are the alums that you keep in touch with as you keep saying Goldman. You probably have a ton of Goldman alum friends that are, dispersed across the globe. And so what they have to understand is they're going into a new normal environment. They're trying to make a network. And I think you go from building friends at school to now building a network. And that network is what's going to catapult you into that next phase. And I think people don't take stock in the networking part of it. And I'm not talking about like, let me hand you a business card, right? I'm talking about having good connections, understanding what people are doing, how they can be helpful, and then being able to, follow those people around and make meaningful connections in order to get what your agenda is going to go towards, right? So there's a lot of new things that are happening in the market that, again, we wish we knew when we were growing up.
So fellow Goldman alum, really close to me, licking lips, thinking about letting go VP level people that were just upped in terms of salary coming back from, paternal leave and everything, saying that absolutely can be automated for the cost of, the Claude vibe coding and the premium chat GPT plan absolutely can be automated, and is thinking about how that's going to be plowed back into the business. And moreover is thinking this is actually at some point, it's going to recourse and crash into the asset management business. If you take, you've seen this cover story on The Atlantic recently, you've seen Peggy Noonan and the others talking about it. Ian, are you okay? Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What if that apocalypse comes to be? What if it eats its own tail? What if it's something that cannibalizes so much upward mobility and salary and Ks and net worth that it becomes net destructive to the economy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, also to that point, Roben, I think that there's definitely a lot of noise right now. I did read the story in Atlantic and, other commentary around AI creating this white collar disruption wave, right? I don't think we're heading into an overnight collapse, which is what the headlines are, kind of signaling. And I think that but we are heading towards a very real redistribution of value. So your Goldman VP that wants to automate and let go, look, this as well as I. Any macroeconomic condition, a CEO or, someone in the C-suite is going to take advantage of that disruption by cutting workforce and, just taking advantage of that cycle. However, I think that there is a redistribution of value that's going to happen. And so, yes, there might be certain aspects that will shrink, but certain aspects that will grow as well. I will say that I'll give you a perfect example. People that are using AI right now in their companies are actually working more than less. And I would say I'm living proof of that. I use every AI tool on the planet. When Maltbot came out, when all of this stuff, I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. I found myself working more than less. And I think the headlines that you're kind of seeing about workforce reduction. Look, let's call a spade a spade. Block came out and said, hey, we are letting go of 4,000 people. What the double click on that headline was, we actually overhired during COVID and now we're reducing it, but we're also going to tag it to this headline of AI, which is not necessarily true. It might be partly true.
Yeah, they call it kitchen sinking or sacrificial lambing,
correct.
Right?
Correct.
Where they describe it could be bad weather, it could have been a monsoon season, it could
correct.
have been a layover,
exactly.
COVID. And they're still referring to COVID.
And for your Goldman, VP, what's going to get compressed? Reporting, analysis at scale, pattern recognition, basic research. What's becoming more valuable, right? He may end up plucking out of that, class people that have good judgment, risk framing, decision making under uncertainty, and then client trust and narrative. Like, who do the clients trust? Who do they want to talk to, right? So AI is going to definitely compress the middle, but it's definitely going to amplify the edges.
Deepali, what do you say to college kids who are about to graduate?
Can I tell
I
you?
think
Yeah.
there was a wait list period. We did special shows as COVID broke 6 years ago. Looking back on that, and the unemployment rate very quickly normalized as we came out of lockdown, and there were variants and the like, but then you saw zero interest rate policy, a huge stock market surge. People couldn't hire fast enough. They had to deal with work from home. Even bosses, they put up with that, and the tables have turned again. But now, is it bad, for example, if a person is so stuck that they take a job at Starbucks in Mexico City and they frame it as, life gave me lemons making sparkling lemonade at Starbucks, right? And learning a language and being resourceful at the same time. Like I want to ask about that true grit and resourcefulness. When I've done informational interviews or I've done interviews for my college alumni network, I always try to ask for that.
So look, I have a 15-year-old, so I do think about this. He's not quite yet in college, but there's going to be that road. And by the way, there's also the question of like, should I go to college as well?
Yeah.
Addressing your question directly for the recent grads, I get a lot of parents that call me and say, Deepali, can you talk to my grad that's
Deepali, you broke LinkedIn. Don't bury the lead. You broke it. You broke it. They blocked you. They thwarted me.
Let me give like a couple of pieces of advice. If you are going into college right now, the one thing that I can advise you is please get yourself on LinkedIn as a college student. I don't care if you don't have anything to put on there just yet. You can just say, hey, I'm a freshman in this college. But what you should be doing is posting your cool projects and all of these other things that you're doing on LinkedIn. By the time you graduate in 4 years, guess what? There is a digital footprint of things that you did that you will stand out more than the next person to that employer that's looking you up. That's advice number one. Advice number two is as a recent or upcoming grad, I would say there's so many things that you can do. First of all, if I was a person thinking like, hey, I'm not going to have a shot at JP Morgan, or I'm not going to have a shot at, any of these companies that are at the career college fair or whatever it is, go on to Crunchbase, figure out which companies are pre-seed, Series A, Series B that got funded, and start smiling and dialing and saying, hey, I'm a recent grad. Here are some projects that I worked on. These are the kinds of things that I'm really interested in. I will work for you for whatever you want me to do. I'm in. The thing is, young people are not showing enough grit and enough willingness to work hard. You're taking me back to your Goldman days. I guarantee you did pitch books and all this stuff, and your VP walks in and said, you know what? The pitch went away. They took your 100-page pitch deck and threw it in the trash can.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That was very self-actualizing.
Correct. And now I think because of the way the world is with all this automation and all of this stuff, people think that they can kind of get away without doing hard work. And I think that is not something that it's a cautionary tale for young grads thinking like, I don't have to work as hard. Grit comes through by your actions, by doing this kind of stuff, by researching the company, by doing the things that other people are not doing. And when you show up like that, you position yourself better, you become more visible, and you become memorable, right? I remember people that did something differently. I'll tell you a great story. When I was at Heidrick, I was hiring
Struggles, the major headhunter.
Yes. So I was running their hedge fund practice and a couple of other practices, capital markets, it came under me as well. And so I had to hire for associates. I had interviewed a bunch of associates, and then a young woman comes in. She's actually Pakistani, told me her sort of story. And the one thing that I remember about her, which she was so excited, she's like, I had this internship on this trading desk, and, my research honestly was around cow farts, because it was the carbon, whatever. That's all I remembered. I remembered cow farts and this gaseous carbon thing that, whatever the trading desk had to do with. I'm like, this girl is crazy. Like, this is awesome. Right. And the thing, she was so into it too. And it just showed me like her interest and her passion and her ability to kind of deep dive, even if it was like a really insane subject. She talked about that role. Like, she learned so much. And I'm like, this is the person I want to hire, because I feel like they'll roll up their sleeves. They'll research whatever. They will get into it. And that's what needs to be displayed. It's remarkable.
So, I mean, you have to get the chance, get the foot in the door to display that. And right now there's so much consternation over bot versus bot and being filtered out. And it's like, I'm banging my head against the rocks. I'm not the first person to tell you that. It's a particular dystopia of our times. And so outside of the informational interview where somebody, if they're really lucky to get their foot in the door with you, or a career person, or they leverage college or high school or church or mosque or whatever it is to get time of day and get the privilege of making that, cow methane impression. What do you do? What do you do to break through? I don't mean to be fatalistic, but this is everything I'm hearing right now.
If you took all of that and got in the door because of those reasons, show up with a plan, show up with research, show up why they should put you in that seat. Because if you've already gotten there, Roben, you've done half the hard work.
The trick is getting there. So much of it is automated.
But it's exactly what you said. Look, I believe in two things. It's always going to be a volume game, especially when you're younger. Use these AI tools to mass apply, and you never know what's going to hit. But the second part of your strategy is networking, right? And here's what I'll say about that, which is completely true. So if you're a young person, you have parents that are, maybe working parents, and you're going to go to your parent and say, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so, and I want them to get in. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes. I'll give you the secret. Your parents' friends will burn their social capital by introducing your kid there. And what's going to happen if your kid doesn't work out? They have burned their social capital, right? Sure. So that's a big problem. If I were to give some advice, one, that young person needs to take the onus on picking up the phone and making their own connection to them versus using a conduit, number one. Number two, I would say that young person also needs to really drive home that this is going to be a networking game that I have to play in any order of the realm. Your weak ties will get you further than your closer ties because they don't want to burn social capital. And that's the point. Use the people that you might have known in passing, right? Even if you weren't that close to them, but flippantly you say, hey, can you introduce me here? These referral networks actually pay off in spades because that person ends up making money because they referred you in. And second, they're not burning a lot of social capital behind you because they're basically saying, hey, I know this person. You should consider them. Go ahead and interview them. If they work out, great. I get a referral bonus. And that's the kind of little secrets, tips, and tricks that people don't know that's really important.
Hold that thought. Before we go to break, I want to share an anecdote from a business school grad. I graduated in 2005. I remember this person, she wanted to work at this impossibly selective hedge fund. I mean, this is uber selective, uber performance. I mean, it's just shrouded in secrecy and lore. They don't talk to the press. I, as a former journalist, never had any luck getting them on the record on background. And of course, with the resume process, and the head of this hedge fund was an alum of the same business school, so there was a foot in the door, but clearly got the rejection letter, got the cold shoulder, got the standard response. I'll never forget this. After graduation, she showed up there and said, it's unacceptable. I'm not leaving until and unless I get an interview. And I thought that was, on the one hand, it was creepy and it broke every norm, but you know what? She got the job. And you still hear those stories on Wall Street. And in my little experience, in a sales and trading job on Wall Street, had I not picked up the phone and followed up with the very busy trader all the way at the bottom of the island in Manhattan on 85 Broad, who's like, all right, the kid wants it enough to have followed up, my life, I mean, I could have been working at a Dunkin', which would have worked out better, but, I digress. Deepali, Vyas, hold that thought. We're going to be back. Full Disclosure airs on NPR, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the fine podcatchers. I put them at one neat link for you, fulldradio.com. Again, fulldradio.com. A shout out to our many public radio listeners. We are on WVTF, Virginia's NPR news source. We are out west in Ventura, California on KPPQ LP. We're down in the gorgeous mountains of Asheville, North Carolina on WPVM. Holler if you too would like us on your air. I'm, of course, on LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm sure you could still find a Friendster or MySpace handle somewhere. I will burn these episodes onto DVD or CD for you and hand them out on Times Square. No, that's just a general reference. And meanwhile, you can catch me every week on both CNN and NPR's Here and Now. Holler if you too would like us on your air. My DMs are always open. If you're just joining us, my guest is Deepali Vyas. She's, of course, the elite recruiter all across social media. She's an executive coach, global head of data and AI executive search at ZRG. You've been well-traveled in corporate America and headhunting circles. You've whispered. You've been like a managerial whisperer. You've talking to bulge bracket firms, smaller firms, boutique firms. You're shape-shifting with this AI movement. Again, you nearly broke LinkedIn, which is a humble brag that I'm willing to share. You can't accept invites anymore. I don't know if I should feel honored or offended, but yes, you are on this show. Take me back to the way back. I always love to ask a person, like I said, what their normal was. When you graduated, what the world was like, what your outlook was like, by way of illustrating your career path.
Yeah, well, Robin, I am an immigrant story, right? I grew up in a motel that my parents ran. And before I even graduated high school, I was interacting with thousands of people a day. I had internships at companies like S&P. It was the dot-com boom. When I graduated, everything was super hot. This was back in 1999. And so the euro wasn't quite there because I went to London School of Economics and they were just showcasing what this new currency would be. Even at that time, I'm like, this is never, what are we doing here? This is never going to happen, right? And so there was a lot of, again, change. This is right before, obviously, 9/11, where things were at a fervor, right? I mean, the job market in my mind was hot. I had a lot of offers coming out of college.
What was your raw material? What was your chief appeal out of college? I want to get a sense for that 22-year-old mind. Was it your charm? Was it your resourcefulness? Were you a quant? Were you really left brain? Were you really analytical? Were you like a middle child who could bring managers together?
Well, I was definitely firstborn. I had a lot of like self-advocacy in me. You know what it was, Robin? I was actually very driven. My only thought was, I want to be successful and I will do whatever and I will do it with speed and efficiency. And I was an extrovert by then, right? And so because I had interacted with so many people in the motel business, by the way, I was ashamed of the motel story when I was graduating. I never talked about it.
Well, you could take that to Hyatt. You could take that to IHG.
Correct.
I mean,
but I wasn't thinking that way.
South Asia and the hotel consolidation business across the world.
But at that time, I wasn't thinking that way, right? And the motel business now is so different, or the motel hotel industry, or, it's a completely different story now. But back then I was like, who's going to want to hear about this? And so I buried it. And what I did amplify was like, I got into president's leadership class at the University of Colorado. I was a finance major. I wanted to be on Wall Street and I had all of these aspirations. So, my lived experience was I have a good degree. I have a good personality. I'm willing to work whatever you want me to do.
So if LinkedIn were prominent back in 99, 2000, would you have put your hotel experience knowing what you know now? Like, were you in a customer service role? Were you in
I would have. I ran the motel. I was running my parents' motel at 13. I did everything, renting the rooms, all the things.
How does a person not like yell that from the rooftops?
Because I didn't grow up in a white picket fence like all my friends did. I grew up in the motel. And so for me, it was this split sort of identity of like, here's my Indian motel life and here's my American, school, I'm just going to put leadership in quotes, life, right? Like I wanted to be seen or perceived that I was more than the motel because I didn't understand the value at that point. Now the unlock was when I was doing the CEO succession for S&P years later, right? When I was at Korn Ferry, I started telling Doug about my motel experience. And then from there, I had gotten an internship at S&P when, in college. And he was like, what? Hold on, what? And like, he was so much more interested in the motel stuff because he's like, that's a lot of grit and that's a lot of burden, at 13. Tell me more about that. And how did you? And so the thing is, that unlock didn't happen for me it didn't happen for me until that time. And what I'm trying to tell people now is not that I want to have, young people add their babysitting experience on their resumes or anything like that. but there's a story that you can craft. Why is Silicon Valley paying $775,000 salaries to data storytellers? It's because no one can craft the story around the data and articulate it well. So, Roben, clearly someone like you would have a fabulous job in the Valley because you are a great storyteller.
No, this is the last stand for me in storytelling. If this doesn't work, I'm going to open my Persian food truck. And we're going to call it Farsi. I know you get a lot of clicks, so I'm putting that out there. We're very pre-money. We're very pre-money right now, but go ahead.
I love it. But, I think that there is the point buried in there is the way that you articulate your story is what people are going to remember. And that's the thing that starts building client trust. It starts building relationships. It starts making you memorable. And if I can just tell young people or even people that are, mid to senior level or thinking about, hey, I've done all of this, Gen Xers that I've done all this for a long time and I want to start, my portfolio career. This is about crafting your story and telling people what your value is so they recognize it right away.
Deepali, I got to ask you because it just happened in a blink of an eye. Did you just attempt to poach me?
I am very subtle about these things. I am very subtle about these things.
Oh, I love it. Full disclosure, I'm Roben Farzad. We're joined by Deepali Vyas, super recruiter and connector. She's like a veritable Netgear Wi-Fi hub. She cracked LinkedIn. She broke LinkedIn. It reminded me of like Tesla when the Model S came out and it actually destroyed like car and drivers test system. And Elon Musk felt the need to put out a second release saying, we're so safe that we broke the safety machine. That's where my mind goes. Non-data driven storytelling. When did you find your voice? When did you find your confidence? I think of that as an inception moment. So even me, I was a stranger in a strange land in the pitch book world of late 90s, early aughts, Wall Street. I found that when financial crisis stuff would happen and they'd pull me aside, the staff would want to know how the Asian financial crisis, the meltdown of Russia, the ruble crisis, long-term capital management happened. And I had a knack for explaining that. There was no role for me at Goldman back then. Now, certainly there is. There's no shortage of podcasts, live events, transmitting this to people. At best, this shows you how ancient the world was they loved to get my voicemails at the end of the day with market recaps because it was like part shock jock and part stock jock. Like, hey, it's Roben here. The FTSE was up. It's
Love it.
But there was no place to kind of marry my love of markets. I don't want to be in the weeds with these pitch books and everything, but I did get a scintilla of what my voice is and what my passion is. And therefore I did pivot into financial journalism. I want to get to that inception and pivot moment for you.
Yeah. I was finding my voice all along the way, but I would say that inflection point was really last year. Or I would say about 15 months ago, I decided there was actually one pivotal day. My son, like I said, at the time, early teen, he had flipped through TikTok and landed on this video where this woman was giving terrible advice. And first of all, I was mad at him for being on TikTok. So let's just park that for a minute. And then I'm like, wait, what is happening? And she was giving resume advice to a generation of young people, by the way, had millions of followers, right? And I just lost it. And to the embarrassment of my son, I downloaded TikTok and said, I'm going to do a video from someone that is actually hired, fired, and have seen millions of resumes and interviewed thousands of people to say the right things because people like me, my peers, were not voicing it out loud. And so while I had, and to go back to what I said about finding my voice all along the way, I found my voice at Heidrick when you're doing all these panels and speaking about the stuff and creating thought leadership. That's part of my voice, but that's more from a corporate landscape, right? When I started my own firm, that was my voice announcing to the world, I'm going to do it my way. When I landed at Korn Ferry and was leading all of these practices.
So don't diminish the Heidrick and Korn Ferry stuff. Very plausibly, a board brings you in and says, tell us who we need to hire as our next
CEO. Not diminishing that at all.
A true headhunter, you're effectively like an in-kind fractional board member for a little bit.
Absolutely. And so that's why I say I don't diminish my voice on those platforms. But what I was trying to do was, how do I meet the people where they are that don't get access to this information in the way that I normally deliver it in corporate, right? And so social media was it. And so when I did that video and it ended up going viral because I started explaining what the Wall Street Journal meant on, concepts like coffee badging or return to office or whatever was going on in the market from my seat, how I understood it, right? And I interpreted it for the masses. And none of my peers were doing that, Robin. And so that's when I really found my voice. And when those videos started going viral, like 3 million, 4 million, first of all, my son
there was a period in the as the pandemic was ending,
Yeah.
quiet quitting, coffee badging,
all of it.
There was a whole vernacular, and we were told to consult Instagram and TikTok and the like for it. And you're correct. Very unverified, not very well curated information that looks plausible, that looks credible. I can go on Instagram right now, and there's this dude that was a former JP Morgan banker, and he's like, I quit this life. I was miserable. I was depressed. I wasn't seeing my fiance. All you have to do is go find a boomer selling a laundromat and take an SBA loan. It just makes it sound so easy. Like, you're just free money. Why aren't you taking it?
Right.
And I worry when my son sees that. I worry when college kids see that.
That was my worry as well. And so my mission was, I want to democratize career literacy. I want to give it away for free. And I want to do it from a credible spot because there's a lot of loud amateurs out there. I don't want this information out there that people think it's an easy hack or an easy fix. And I'm really big on, that's why I have my newsletter and I literally give the scripts of like, here's what you should say. Because oftentimes people are just like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know how to do any of these things. And so I just made it my mission to say, I'm going to interpret this for you. What does it really mean? What does the job market really mean when these numbers come out? And what does it mean for you? And second, if you are pivoting, if you are on the job market, if you are doing any of these things, here's how you should approach it very methodically. Or here's a script for you if you want to get promoted. Or here are methods in building your brag book. So when you do go to that performance conversation, you get that raise. It's the stuff that we weren't taught.
And you're picking this up through experience or sharing notes with other people in your field because you still have a full daytime job.
I do have a
feeding this content beast.
Right? Yeah, I do have a full daytime job, and I get to create content on. Look, it's never easy, and there's not enough hours in the day, and I do this on the weekends and all of the stuff where I can kind of compress all of the content that I'm thinking about from that week and do it all at one shot. And I try to do right by everybody. But when a thought comes to mind, you better believe I'm jotting it down. I'm thinking about it. And I'm like, okay, I want to do a video on it. And you notice like my videos are 3 minutes, right? And so it's like, I want to get the punch out there, just enough information for people to say, you know what, that makes sense. Let me go and try that.
Deepali, in closing, how do we look around corners in terms of future-proofing your job? I'm thinking about, I started my freshman year of college was 1994. There were whispers about CompuServe and the World Wide Web. You'd show up on campus. They asked you have an Ethernet cable. You would have an email address. You were just getting your sea legs about this. And then there was a Breathless Today show. I think it was with Katie Couric and gosh, I forget the other guy, but you could go look it up. It's a viral video on YouTube. They're like, what is internet? What is internet going to do?
Oh, I remember
internet going to change? And then there's no way you could have looked around the corner and imagined the iPhone or Napster. It's such a net productivity boost, but it has also put a lot of people out of work. It killed so much of the newspaper industry. Classified ads went away. It changed banking. You don't really see many bank tellers anymore. It changed customer service, the app experience. I mean, the iPhone and everything else. Which part of your job is kind of futurist, and who do you talk to kind of future-proof the advice that you give out there? Because look, you could have taken any point in U.S. history when we go back to what normalcy was and say that it was terrified and unprecedented. But over time, capitalism has prevailed. Job creation has prevailed. Wealth creation has prevailed. This might be the one that breaks everything's back, but the odds are against that.
I think there's too many people that will not let that happen. But I'll say something provocative here. I actually don't think you can future-proof a job anymore because jobs change too quickly. But what I will say is you can future-proof your ability to stay valuable as things change. The real skill, you're asking me if I'm looking around corners, right? It's less about predicting the future and it's more about recognizing the value is shifting before the role forces you to. So if I'm sitting in my seat right now and I'm thinking, wow, I'm doing all of this manual stuff, or I have all of these workflows that are a little bit more mundane, staying on top of that and saying, where can I automate and where can I place? I want people to operate at the top of their license. There's so many mundane things that we do in our day, and technology is able to, have you strap on an AI jetpack and superpower your day. That's how you should be thinking about it. And I think the four signals to watch is like, where is time being eliminated, right? If parts of your job are getting faster every quarter, that's your early warning sign. So if that's like reporting, manual analysis, coordination work, efficiency is usually the first step before elimination. And then you have to think about, where is decision making moving, right? So you have to pay attention to who's making the decisions now versus a year ago. Is it moving up, like more centralized? Is it moving down, more automated? Is it moving across? Is it cross-functional? And it really tells you where the power is going, right? See, I'm all about reading the power map and the influence map. And then the third is, what questions are leaders asking right now, right? And the question that leadership is asking today is, tell me what skills will matter tomorrow. And it's not like, what can we get from the data? It's, what the heck should we do with it? And last but not least, I will say, work still requires trust. And the safest parts of any job are the ones where someone has to trust your judgment. And that's client-facing skills, risk calls that you have to make, ambiguous situations. So if your work can be checked instantly, it can eventually get replaced. But these are the things where you, like the value, like where are you in the value chain? Like going from doing to interpreting to advising to deciding. Like that's looking around the corner, right? And so that's how I would look at it practically.
I don't want to close on a downer, but I have to get this last actionable bit from you. There are no shortage of people, at least in my social network, I could tell you anecdotally, who have really hit the screen. They're in a ditch. I don't know what the metaphor is. They're despondent. They dread Sundays and Mondays. After a certain period of time of joblessness, whether it's structural or whether it's cyclical, you start to doubt your own, earnings ability for the family. It gets into other aspects of your life. Clearly, mental health. You have to worry about healthcare. You have to worry about the kids and the like. I just turned 50. There are no shortage of people in my peer group who thought that they would be well into their 60s and their, earning years and everything, and are having, and you just saw the article in the Wall Street Journal, people deciding to just opt out, saying, I'm not cut out for this. I want to downsize my life. There's the, fire movement of kind of retire early and be super savers. If you are in that ditch right now, and I know there's no one size fits all advice, but I know we have listeners here. I know no shortage of people, youngsters, college kids, people in their 20s and 30s have reached out to me saying, how do I stop treading water? How do I grab something that's actionable? What are the first steps that you do? How do you get out of this rut?
Yeah, I think taking audit, first of all, what you're describing is very real. And I do see it across all age groups, right? Early career, mid-career, senior executives. And the hardest part, it isn't the job loss. It's what it's doing to their identity, because most people, work isn't just income, right? It's structure, it's confidence, it's how you measure your contribution to society. And after a certain period of time, it stops feeling like a market issue and it starts to feel personal, right? And people go from, I haven't found the right role yet, to like, I'm not valuable anymore. And what I tell people is, this is not unemployment, it's dislocation. I mean, look, the longer you feel stuck, the more your strategy has to change and not just your effort, right? And for those, I'm going to talk to the older crowd. I mean, look at me, right? I'm doing a lot. Think about the opportunity. Roben, you have this podcast. You were a journalist. You've pivoted in your career. You started at Goldman. Like, the people need to think more expansively. So if I could empower people to say, or to think about, take audit of the skills that you have. What do people come to you for? What problems do you always solve? What are you really great at? What's the one thing that people are like, you know what? That person is really great at that. You can create a whole business around that. I'm writing a book. I'm starting my own podcast. I got onto social media at the ripe age of 47. Like, what am I doing? And I'm doing all of these things. And the thing is, I don't think I'm special. I am just leveraging the skills that I have and the things that really excite me and I go out and do it. And I think a lot of people talk about doing it versus just going out there and doing it. And for those of you that think there's already too many podcasts, there's already too many content creators. Okay, I would love for you to do an audit of how many people actually have a 1 million person following in the grand scheme of the global, economy. And so that is my point. There's so many opportunities if they seek and find them, right? And so I understand, let's retire early, let's cut the expenses, all of that. Those same people have so much value that they are underplaying right now that they can go and consult and, be on advisory boards or whatever it is just to keep themselves engaged and value add. So I would say rebuild your narrative, right? Before you send another resume, you need to get clear on how you position yourself. What problems do I solve today? Where does my experience still have value? And how do I explain my path that makes sense? And if they do that, there's so many opportunities and open doors for them.
Deepali Vyas. She is a LinkedIn, Instagram, social media, career recruiting colossus. She's known as the elite recruiter. What's awesome is Boomer got to flex on Gen Alpha, right? You proved to your son that how you like them apples. Mommy can play at this game as well. I think that's awesome. I had no idea that you were so...
The best is his friends follow me, and I just find that wild.
No cap, Mom. No cap. I don't know what the language is. And 2, I'm really grateful to you, No Taro, for putting me in play as a $750,000 Silicon Valley data-centric storyteller. I mean, that makes me feel rich. I'm going to go to Chipotle and get that dollop of guacamole today. Thank you for coming on. You consider yourself a friend of the show, if I may be so forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Roben. So much fun to chat with you. I'm sure we could have talked about so many more stories, but I appreciate you having me on the show.
Thank you. Full disclosure, special thanks to Ian Stewart. If you are listening to us on the radio, note that while we cut for broadcast length, the entirety of every interview is on podcast. We are on the NPR network, Spotify, Apple. Watch us on YouTube. You could find them all at one link, fulldradio.com. Again, fulldradio.com. And please do recommend us to a friend. A shout out to our home station, WVTF Radio IQ, Virginia's NPR news source. DM me to carry us on your air, and catch me every week on both CNN and NPR's Here and Now. I'm Roben Farzad. Thank you for listening. Back with you next week.